Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.
If your eyes are the windows to your soul, and your glasses are the windows to your eyes, then it's pretty important to find your perfect frames. That's why at Warby Parker, we've made shopping for eyewear as easy and fun as can be. Peruse endless styles in our stores, or use our app to virtually try on frames and get personalized recommendations. To find your next favorite pair of glasses, sunglasses, or contact lenses, or to locate your nearest Warby Parker store, head over to warbyparker.com. That's warbyparker.com.
Hello, everyone. So, very exciting news about the Menendez brothers.
Exciting to some, maybe not so exciting to others, but exciting to us.
Yes.
If you've been following us, you know that we're a bit obsessed with them. We've done several episodes about their case and the crime and the latest developments. So this is just a kind of a quick update about what happened last week. And what happened was the district attorney for Los Angeles County, George Gascon, held a press conference where he said he was going to recommend to the court that the brothers be resentenced from life without the possibility of parole and to be resentenced for murder, not manslaughter, but murder, but meaning resentenced to a specific sentence, not life without parole.
Mm-hmm.
So if you recall, they were originally sentenced to the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
But then the death penalty in California kind of went away. They were resentenced to life without the possibility of parole, and now he's asking a court to approve that they be resentenced again for murder and just given a specific sentence, being eligible for parole.
Mm-hmm.
And so the sentence that they would get for murder would be, because there were two murders, it would be 50 years to life, 25 years to life times 2. But because they were both under the age of 26 at the time that they committed the murders, they would be eligible for parole sooner.
Mm-hmm.
And basically eligible for parole right now because they've been serving for 35 years, almost. So I think it's interesting that, it's still going to be a murder sentence.
Mm-hmm.
It's not he's not recommending manslaughter, which I think is smart, because even under murder, like I said, they're still eligible for parole, and that takes away some of the anger people might have about, the abuse excuse or this or that.
Yeah. What I think is interesting, because he mentioned, because I watched the press conference, and first off, let's start by talking about this Gascon. Aren't district attorneys supposed to have a little bit of swagger, a little bit of charisma, be a good public speaker? Because this guy isn't. I mean, he buried the lead. Like, do you know what I mean? Even when he announced it, he I was just like, I thought that usually people who ran for these and won, is it just me that like have kind of big personalities? And I'm not saying that, listen, people need to be obviously elected for what they can do, but like not their personalities per se, but right. Like he campaigned and won and okay. I don't know.
Well, I mean, he's not your typical, law and order district attorney with that kind of swagger person. No, he's not. And he is a more progressive DA, and he's under a lot of political fire. He's probably maybe going to lose the election over this.
Yeah.
Because he's up for re-election in November, and people in Los Angeles are pissed off because of crime and homelessness and this, and they're blaming him for all these problems. And he might not get reelected. And this is just kind of another thing. So it was courageous, I think, of him to do what in his conscience, he thought he should do.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's not like the typical, character you would expect.
Yeah. Listen, I'm not criticizing him. I am simply saying that I was surprised because usually someone who's a bit more quiet and thoughtful isn't the person that gets elected. That's all.
Yeah.
So, but I know I've heard some criticism about him, but I personally like all of these resentencing. Like maybe it's just too liberal for people, but I agree with him and I'm glad he's doing this. And absolutely he is. I have a lot of respect for anyone who's willing to say, I'm going to do what's right. And if that means the end of my career at this stage, then that's that. And I think you have to do what allows you to go to bed at night. The one thing I thought was interesting is he also mentioned that I guess, he admits like it's not just him making these decisions, that it's the entire group.
Right. So you mean the entire office?
Well, he mentioned the office. I mean, I assume that he has the final say, but he's talking about the office and how people feel. And apparently I was surprised to hear that there are people in the office who don't believe the abuse, don't believe that there was abuse, and believe that they need to stay in prison. Now, I can understand someone saying, I don't care, they committed these murders, they need to be in prison for the rest of their lives. Okay, that I get. But how do you not believe the abuse by this point? Like, how do you not think that come on?
Well, this was something I really didn't understand is who gives a shit what the rest of the office thinks? You're the district attorney. You represent the office. You decide what you're going to do. When he said that there were people in his office who were going to show up at this hearing that's going to happen before a judge and register their objection to this, I thought, what legal basis do they have? Were they even in the district attorney's office when this case was prosecuted? I doubt it. That was 35 years ago.
Yeah, of course they weren't.
Yeah. What standing do they have? And hope if someone knows this, please tell me. I don't know how district attorney's offices work internally, but I don't know why they would even have.
Yeah.
Who cares? He's the district attorney. He dictates, he sets the policy. He's the one who's going to go to court and he's going to argue for the resentencing. So I don't understand that. But so what's going to happen is, like I said, there's going to be a judge who hears this. The judge will then decide whether or not to go forward with this. And the judge is this Judge William Ryan, who, according to TMZ, is a liberal judge. He's kind of given cases that others don't really want to handle. He's not afraid to take things on, but he's fair and open-minded. So even if he says, okay, I agree with you, they should be resentenced, it then has to go to the parole board, the California State Parole Board. Then the parole board will, hear what the Menendez brothers have to say, and then they will decide whether or not they will recommend parole, and then it goes to the governor, Gavin Newsom. So then the governor will decide whether or not to accept or reject the parole board's recommendation. So if let's say that they recommend, or let's say that they reject parole,
Mhm.
then there can be an appeal with the Court of Appeals. So, I mean, this has a long way to go.
Mhm.
You know, there's several layers of stuff going on here, and there's a long way that it has to go to get approved. But the interesting thing was, then I started thinking, well, why can't Newsom just, commute their sentence and give them clemency? But then I looked into it. There was a California ballot initiative years ago, when we were doing all this like tough on crime stuff, that prevents inmates who have life without the possibility of parole from applying for clemency. And the only reason why the Menendez case is being reviewed now is because for many years there was a law on the books that prohibited this kind of resentencing. This is something new that allows inmates to ask the court to take another look at their case, but given that circumstances have changed over time. And so that's why we're here at this point, because for many years they had exhausted all of their legal remedies, and we're kind of in a period of time now, the pendulum swings back and forth between being tough on crime, and then right now we're kind of in a period where we're looking at things, reevaluating and thinking, well, was this really good? And, just the acceptance that, yes, people are abused and it makes them do horrible things. And
and also, even if you're not abused, people do horrible things. People do bad things. And isn't this rehabilitation?
Right. Isn't that the point of it?
Gascon said this, right? He talked about this is about rehabilitation. Like if you take a step back and look at these, like whether they were abused or not, these two boys, they're men now, but like they came into prison. I mean, he started listing all the things they were doing, and I'm sure it was a fraction. And I think what he said, they had a choice when they, you hear, I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. You have a choice. So are you going to join a gang, do drugs, fight the rules, be a menace? Or are you going to get in there and do what they did, which is they got educations and they helped other people and they helped, and helping people that were going to get out and be with their families. Like how much strength that took for the two of them to be like, I'm never going to get out, but I will help you. And like helping other inmates.
Right.
And helping other people.
They had no expectation of ever getting out.
Yeah.
So it's not like they were doing these things just like to make their record look good. They were doing it because they really wanted to do it.
And that's rehabilitation.
Exactly. And so I think it's kind of interesting too that, they're both being treated with the same, under the same kind of guidelines, because, you could argue that Lyle was maybe somewhat more culpable than Erik. Erik was the one who was actually, currently, at the time was experiencing the abuse, and, Lyle was a little more problematic. But again, they've kind of become to be synonymous with each other. It was like this happened to them together. They did it together. They're kind of, they're together. And also, it wasn't just the sexual abuse, and it wasn't just Jose.
Yeah.
They were abused by both of their parents in different ways, physically, verbally. Jose was always threatening to kill them. Even Kitty was threatening to kill herself and to kill them because she was suicidal. Physical abuse, trauma, just all. They were abused in multiple different ways. And look what happened once they were removed from that situation.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
They're good citizens. And
that's also better people.
And that's what Garcon was also saying, which I agree with, which is they're not dangerous to society. They killed the people they needed to kill.
Like they killed their abusers.
They killed their abusers. And yes, and they're not dangerous to society. They're not, and he also, Gascon mentioned this too, of all the people they've let out. I mean, something like a very small fraction of these people that they resentenced and let out have reoffended. And if we took those stats of that, then it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
What, we would be this, and, it'd be like Sweden over here, like the Netherlands or something.
Yeah. Because the recidivism rate in general is over 50% of just people who get out because they've done their time.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, this is a very select group of people. This doesn't happen very often, if at all.
The other thing was, I thought that was interesting. I guess I had heard sort of rumblings about these laws, but the fact that I guess if you're under the age of 26 when you commit the crime, I didn't realize that was looked at differently, which I'm so glad it is, because your brain doesn't fully form until you're 25. And I've always said that I think I hate all of this, like, someone who's 17 and then prosecuting them like an adult. It's like, no, even a 21-year-old's not like an adult, So I'm glad to hear that. That I feel like is, wow, good. Because I think then this murder charge, that makes sense. Like, because I assume when you talk about the murder and it's 50 years to life, they would normally be sentenced, that would be concurrently, right? Because they murder two people.
Yeah, the judge has the discretion to do it either way. But in a case like this, it's always concurrent because it's a very bad crime. But yeah, it would. So if you put into effect, I don't know what the 20 being under 26, I'm not quite sure that in numbers wise how that affects the term, but everyone has said they've served more than enough time to satisfy that.
The other option too that could happen is the parole board, right, could recommend not to go out and parole. And Gavin Newsom could say, okay, I agree with the parole board. And then couldn't they be up again? I mean, because some of this is, if they are resentenced, even if they don't get out now, then they've got like a chance, hope. Right. Like they finally have hope.
They have parole. They have possibility of parole.
Yeah. And so I'm just, do we have any idea of like, would they be up for parole in another 2 years or 7 years or 10 years? I mean, how does that work?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure of the frequency of that, but it seems like, I don't know, it seems like it's usually a pretty long time in between parole chances. But I mean, I don't know. I think that, I was listening to Gavin Newsom's new podcast, Politic, and they were talking about this case, and it was interesting. He said that he actually met with the producers of Monster, of the Ryan Murphy series, and he says every week, he goes through all the parole board recommendations and the requests for pardons and commutations, and he said particularly at the end of the year is a busy time. And, so he's going to become probably part of this process at some point in here. And he said that the most determinative thing to a parole board is what kind of a prisoner you have been. And if you've taken responsibility and you've gone through the rehabilitation process. So, like you said, that's the best thing that they have going for them. And he even said, I've seen people with 25 years to life be released. It's not that uncommon. And if anyone deserves it,
should be these two boys, men. But I do think that people have to reset their expectations, because I think a lot of people are like, they're going to be home for Christmas, for the holidays. And it's like, a lot. I mean, that means that the system's going to have to move really quickly. And I don't know if it moves. Because you're talking about 5 steps. This is just step 1. They've got several more steps to go. But I think that this is it's a good first step. And I also think on a national level, if they can be released, I think that this is changing the dialogue. This is changing the narrative around abuse. And I hope that we, change these, either change our attitude, change what we need to change in order to make it so that, that, you're not having to spend 35 years, that you're not having to get to the point of killing your parents, but then having to spend 35 years behind bars.
Well, yeah. And it's also, it exposes a real flaw in our legal system in that the laws do change, things do progress, but nothing's ever reviewed, it feels like, because since they were sentenced, so much has happened in the law in terms of reform of, being able to use the battered woman syndrome, because they were denied that. But it's now the law has been expanded to cover not just battered women, but anyone who's in that kind of a power dynamic situation.
Yeah.
If the trial were held today, they would be able to argue that. They would be able to argue imperfect self-defense. All these things that they were denied. So I don't think it's right that just because that was the law at the time that you were sentenced or tried, that you're stuck with it. And the reality is that most prisoners don't have the resources to do what they're doing here. And having lawyers, the top lawyers in the state, working for you to get your case in front of somebody, in front of some judge, and argue that you're eligible for resentencing, argue all of these things. Most of these are just poor people sitting in prison, and their case will never be reviewed.
Someone who was caught with a bag of weed how many years ago,
But I mean, we're talking about these people who are in for life. Like those people will get out.
Those people. Yeah.
I'm talking about these people who have these life sentences or life without parole sentences, whatever. And there's a lot of them, because remember, we went through this period where, it was the backlash to these, the polyclass kidnapping and all of that stuff. So we have people who have been so harshly sentenced for decades and decades, and they're just sitting there. And now we're like, oh, well, maybe, we should take these other things into consideration, and maybe we should, but who's going to review their cases? There are legal avenues now, and there's ways but you have to have a lawyer. The state doesn't pay for a lawyer for you. I mean, if you're sentenced to death, you get an automatic appeal. But and the state pays for it. But otherwise, it's like you're on your own.
I don't know. I think I think we have to do away with life without possibility of parole. I don't think we should do that. I mean, again, and maybe it seems silly to have to bring Charlie Manson up for parole every umpteen years,
but he's not going to get out, even though he has eligibility.
But let's do this across the board. Trust me, all of the people that we all hear about are going to be in prison. Don't worry. But the Menendez brothers, kids that get into gangs at 14, 15 years old and are one of, remember the felony law? What's that? The
felony murder.
Felony murder. They were one of 7 kids. He didn't have a gun, but was there. And now they're serving the rest of their lives in prison. It's like, those are the people. But it almost sounds like they need, they've got to create a division of attorneys that just do that, but again, it's money.
It's money. And also there's just the stigma of, once you're in prison, you're not seen as a member of society. You're not seen as human. It's a lot to fight against.
Yeah. Well, and here we are. We hear the criticism of this Gascon is, because of Skid Row and this and that, and he wants to let more people out, and people aren't getting harsh enough punishments for stealing things, and you can steal things and it can be a misdemeanor. It's like, okay, let's all slow down here. But I agree with what he's doing. I think someone's got to start. And I'd be sad to see if I don't know enough about him. But I do think that if he's just being, not being reelected simply because they're blaming him for problems he didn't start, that doesn't seem fair.
It's happening all over. It's happening in Oakland here. They're trying to recall the district attorney because she has said and has implemented new policies where there are certain things, that she's not going to prosecute, or there's not going to be jail time for, because she doesn't want just this pipeline of young Black men going to prison.
Yes.
She's trying to stop that. And whether what she's doing is working or not, I'm not really sure. And people are mad about it because there is a lot of like just petty crime, car break-ins, car thefts, shoplifting, this and that, that affects regular people, and it pisses them off.
Yeah.
And then they know that even if they catch the people, like most people never even get caught, even if they catch the people, they know they're not going to be punished. And so now you have all of these angry residents who want to recall her. And it's like, well, I don't know if that's really going to change anything or help anything. It's a bigger problem than that. I mean, the problem is systemic, decades and decades and decades of systemic racism and poverty. How is one person to be blamed for that?
Well, and the other thing too is like, can we try something different? Can we just try? This isn't working. So can we try? I love it when these people come in and they just try to let's approach this differently. And then people get really worked up about it. And listen, at the most base level, I get it. I was on BART the other day. There's people jumping over the turnstiles. I mean, BART's expensive. And it's like, I'd like to not have to pay the $7 to come in and out of the city. But then I just think to myself, I'm like, but okay, fine. I could jump the stall too if I wanted and risk it, if it was that big of a deal to me. And I don't know why this person needed to jump the stall. They have circumstances in their lives. For me, the $7 is not going to.
Right. I'm glad I don't have to.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I don't have to worry about paying $7, that's nothing to me. How privileged am I?
Yeah. And that's where I go to. I'm like, you know what? I've never had to worry about this. This isn't my thing. Whatever this person's going through. Okay, fine. And fine. And I do. And I understand. And seeing that in little small ways, especially when you live in the city, it's hard. It's hard to see. It's hard to watch. But the only way we're going to change is if we push ourselves to approach these things differently and think about them differently and give it some time. That's the other thing too, is we never give anything time. If it doesn't work immediately, we're like, well, that sucks. It's like,
well, yeah.
Let's see what happens.
This guy probably has one of the hardest jobs in the world. Los Angeles County is massive. What is it for? I don't know how many, 20 million people or something live in Los Angeles County, maybe more. Massive, massive. It's so diverse. The richest of the rich people and the poorest of the poor people. How in the hell do you manage that, or like keep everyone happy? I mean,
yeah. Well, and Oakland's a lot like that too.
Yeah.
There's some very,
it's not as big, but it's got the same dynamic.
There are, Oakland has
Alameda County,
incredibly wealthy people. This is tech world out here. It's not Silicon Valley, but there's a lot of, people living up in the Oakland Hills.
That's all old money.
Yeah.
People live there for, centuries.
Oh yeah. So, and same thing in the poorest of the poor. And then all these people in between that are, pissed about everything. So anyway, this was going to be a quick talk, but anyway,
criminal justice minutes turned into a criminal justice half hour. But but yeah, we will, of course, keep you updated. And if anyone has any insight into this DA issue with the people weighing in, I'm very curious about why current day DAs are able to weigh in on something that happened in their office 35 years ago. Please explain. That's my ask.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
Check out our show, Psych Legal Pop. We are every Tuesday and Thursday, and we have a Patreon. So check us out. Bye.
Bye.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit Jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Howdy, howdy, ho, and welcome to Fantasy Fan Fellas. I'm Hayden, producer of the Fantasy Fangirls podcast and your resident lover of all things Sanderson.
And I'm Steven, your bookish internet goofball, but you can call me the Smash Daddy.
And we are currently deep diving Brandon Sanderson's fantasy epic, Mistborn. But here's the catch. Steven here has not read Mistborn before.
That's right, hey. So each week, you'll get my unfiltered, raw reactions to every single chapter.
And along the way, we'll do character deep dives, magic explainers, and Steven will even try to guess what's next. Spoiler alert, he'll be wrong.
Newsflash, I'm never wrong. Episodes come out every Wednesday, and you can find Fantasy Fan Fellas wherever you get your podcasts.